So we have been getting so many calls about student loans, student loan debt, and Dr. Patel, I'm hoping you can talk about, what you learned through the process and what you wish you knew sooner, and anything that you want to share about student loans would be awesome.
Sure. So I think the first very important thing is that as a dental student, when you are looking at what loans you need to take out and budgeting for your living expenses to make sure that you have that budget, it's important to set that early on. I'm sure Brett can speak to this. Uh, I had classmates that were taking out maybe more money than they needed and having a lot of fun. Just remember that that's debt that needs to be paid back by you in one way or the other. And then once you're graduated on the other side of it, I think it's important to still have a plan and understand that life happens, right? So if you sign a contract for an associateship and you're making 150 or $200,000, that's pre-tax, right? Tax comes out of that. Hopefully you have a plan to save for retirement. That has to be considered. And then you have to live, but you still have that student loan debt sitting there. There are different ways to handle it, right? Public service loan forgiveness is still here. And so if you choose to practice in an area that qualifies for that program. It's 10 years of payments under a federal plan, and then you get the entirety of the balance forgiven. As it stands right now, if you choose to be on one of the other federal repayment programs, at the end of your term, 20, 25 years, whatever it is, that balance gets treated like income tax. Is that correct, Brett? And so you do owe that money.
Yeah, and there are some changes happening very soon with the student loan forgiveness on those loans. So the income-based retirement or repayment schedules will switch. And so instead of getting loan forgiveness after 20 years, it'll go under the RAP is the acronym, the Repayment Assistance Program. Those are the new income-driven payment plans that will go into effect starting next year for the new loans. July 2026, I believe, is the date. And then the old ones will phase out in 2028. And so, yeah, if you're planning on loan forgiveness, that's a long time horizon. You're going to have 30 years now, and that is going to be a taxable event. So typically, the loan forgiveness is kind of weird because you're trying to drive your income very low for a long period of time and pay as little as possible so you get more forgiven in the back end. But what happens is your loan keeps growing and growing and growing, and it creates a tax bomb. And so now you have another 10 years that's going to be added on to your loan potentially growing, and that's going to create an even larger tax bill in the loan forgiveness year 30 years down the road. So we can talk more about that a little bit, but that's essentially how it's working. And so, yeah, you need to consider that as something you need to budget for if you're going to go that route.
Yep.
Yeah, and Brett, you and I do practice transitions together, and we talk to a lot of dentists that are buying and selling practices. And I know, like, we work with Bank of America, who's an endorsed service of ours, and some of the advice they give is they see people throw money at their student loans to try to get it paid down, but they don't focus on building up like a nest egg. And Bank of America says that they don't look at the student loan debt as a high risk, so it's not a huge factor when providing the loan. Is that what you see too, right?
That's exactly right. Things like your cash, having some cash savings, your production numbers, the cash flow from the practice that you want to buy, like all of those things are probably weighted more heavier than what your student loan balance is and how much debt you're carrying on that end of things. So yeah, I would certainly focus more on building up some cash reserves, get a nice 6-month emergency fund, get some extra cash reserves that can carry you. If you were going to buy a practice, you can cover a couple months worth of operating expenses, and that will go a long way. Just being able to have some flexibility going into practice ownership.
Right.
If you try to refinance your loans and you're thinking, I'm just going to get really aggressive, what happens is they squeeze up typically your loan repayment. And so now instead of paying your loans off over 20 years, you might be paying your loans off over 10 years or 15 years. And so your loan payment is higher per month. You might get a better interest rate, but in terms of like cash flow, money available to cover other loans, you might have some squeeze there. And so you need to take that into consideration. Maybe just pump the brakes a little bit if you're considering purchasing a practice. Pump the brakes a little bit before you start refinancing student loans, and keep those, keep those on the back burner. Keep paying your minimum payments, and then once you get into a practice, you can figure out what your game plan is going to be once you know what your income is going to be after that point. Everyone hears that there's a student loan deduction. However, student loan deduction is only $2,500, and that phases out once your income hits $100,000 if you're single and $200,000 if you're married. So don't bank on being able to deduct any student loan interest unless you're married and have a non-working spouse and are just getting started. So really, that's not something you can plan on. There is a pre-tax benefit that's newer. It's called the Employer Student Loan Assistance Program. And what that is it allows your employer to give you $5,250 of pre-tax benefit. They can essentially make $5,250 worth of student loan payments for you. And so consider that as a potential negotiation point. Not a lot of companies do that. In fact, I've only seen it a couple times over the last couple years. It is out there though, it is available. And you may be able to negotiate that in your employment package. The reason that most people are not offering that is you can't discriminate. You can't say, I want to give this employee benefit to my highly compensated employees, my associates, and not to my hygienists. You can't do that. You have to be equal across the board in offering this benefit to staff. And so that's maybe one of the reasons why people are not offering this, but it is out there and it is a great pre-tax benefit to consider in your negotiations.